Throughout the history of film, there has been one form of adaptation that no matter how hard they've tried, the filmmaking industry couldn't quite crack. The video game movie adaptation. No matter how large or how small the game was, movies based on video games seem to fail time and time and time again. For a long time, it seemed impossible to successfully bring a beloved video game franchise to the silver screen in a way that was satisfying to regular moviegoers and the fans who originally loved it. But one day, one movie managed to break through the curse put upon video game movies so many moons ago, and was both a near perfect representation of the interactive source material that inspired it, and a pretty good movie in its own right. And that movie was none other than Professor Layton and the Eternal Diva, which I actually reviewed a while back. But if we're talking about when Hollywood finally got with the program...
We're gonna do this, you and me.
Hello everybody, I'm KC and welcome to another edition of Let's Talk About. And today, let's finally talk about Detective Pikachu. Because it's so great that Hollywood managed to break the bad video game movie curse when they got to the most important video game franchise. Well, the most important to me at least. Longtime viewers don't need any verification of my love for Pokemon, but since I haven't talked about it for a while, and just in case you're new here, let me lay down real quick my Pokemon pedigree. I've been a fan of Pokemon since I was 6 years old, during the height of Pokemania back in 1999. I've played at least one main series game from every generation, several spin-off games, and still play Pokemon Go. I've seen multiple seasons of the anime, every single movie, owned several of them, and tons of merchandise that I've accumulated over the last 2 decades, including figures, plushies, pins, miscellaneous pieces of all kinds, and of course, multiple binders of the trading cards spanning across all generations. In layman's terms, yeah, Pokemon's alright. But despite, or maybe even because of that dedication, I was rather hesitant when the announcement of a live-action Pokemon movie was made, especially with the focus being around Detective Pikachu of all things. But that choice might have been for the best. Detective Pikachu is not only an obscure enough game that the expectations for what the story should be wouldn't be as high, but a whodunit story is more compatible to a movie narrative than the typical Pokemon journey. Now, I was going to play Detective Pikachu before this video to compare the two, since most of the reviews I had seen were from people who did not play the game, but then I forgot. I do still intend to, because puzzle-solving detective game with a Pokemon coat of paint is all of my yes, but for now we just have to focus on the movie, so let's see what we've got. Tim Goodman, played by Justice Smith, is a young adult who finds out his estranged father has disappeared and might have even been killed. When he heads to Harry's home in the bustling Rhyme City, he runs into his father's partner Pikachu, who can talk and has amnesia. A lot to take in, I know. So the two of them team up to find answers to their questions as an even greater conspiracy unfolds before them. I think the only proper place to start this discussion is talking about the incredibly elaborate production design, starting with the only thing anybody cares about, the Pokemon. This was by far the thing I was most concerned about. Pokemon designs are inherently this bizarre, masterful combination of cool, cute, and kind of unsettling when you give them more than a passing thought.
Hey, Cubone! Not everyone can pull off wearing the skull of their dead relative.
All ranging in popularity, obviously, but ask around and you'll find that every Pokemon is someone's favorite. I've even seen some people say Trubbish is their favorite. Yeah. The key to the appeal, though, is not just how interesting they look, but how they all have personality to them. Just like a person, it's usually easy to see what a Pokemon is feeling and therefore empathize and communicate with them more than regular animals. It's one of the things that makes the idea of having a Pokemon partner so desirable. So as cool as it can be to see concepts of real-life Pokemon, it always felt to me like they lost something in that translation. The universal, endearing quality that makes every one of these 900 plus partners want to be someone's companion. I was worried that that jump to live action would make such carefully crafted designs enter into this uncanny valid territory and just wind up looking really off-putting, similar to the disconnect I touched on in my Lion King 2019 video. But thank Arceus, that's not what happened. Thanks to a lot of time and dedication and great designers, including well-known real-life Pokemon fan artist RJ Palmer, the Pokemon translate into the real-world setting unbelievably well. It took me me a second to get used to, I will admit, but each one looks so true to their cartoon counterpart. Some of them do look weird, like Psyduck and the ever-enduring nightmare that is live-action Apom, but most of them look great. Lickitung, Gengar, and Mr. Mime, for example, look weird, but weird in a way that's true to their already unusual designs. And some Pokemon just have design aspects that are gonna look weird when applying real-world logic. Like, we all knew Greninja's scarf with his tongue, but Detective Pikachu makes us come to terms with that in a whole new way. And there are so many Pokemon like Machamp, Golurk, Charmander, and Pidgeot that look like they leapt right off the console and into our laps. They made sure to make the Pokemon endearing and recognizable while adding in realistic texture work that would help them blend into the real world. Stuff like layers of fur on Pokemon like Growlithe and Emolga, to giving Pokemon like Charizard and Gyarados scales, or the extra layer of dirt and plant life they added to Torterra, which looks amazing. Once you process all the changes or lack of changes and take a step back, you understand design choices and appreciate the care that went into making them look like the creatures we've loved for over 20 years, but still look as if they could live side by side with us in real life. Which is basically my long-winded way of saying, look how great Bulbasaur looks! There are so many bouncing little bulbs in this movie, and they are so pure and precious, and I love it! They got the only Pokemon that matters right. That is the thing you should take away from this video.
Why are you still thinking about Bulbasaur?
He's the cutest one of all.
And how the Pokemon interact with the world. They feel so alive, not just in how they look, but how they move. The shots of them in forests and wildlife almost makes it feel like a nature documentary, and seeing Pokemon assisting their partners in Rhyme City in all sorts of creative ways is amazing. Like Lounger being speakers for DJs, or Ditto being used as a glorified assistant. Or on the nature side, having mountains that turn out to be giant, genetically altered Torterra. God, I love this movie. They remember that Pokemon are unique creatures, and while sometimes they are just walking alongside their trainers, other times they are doing something specific to that Pokemon in the background, even if it's just sitting there. They also did a surprisingly good job with Pikachu, though out of all the designs, this is the one I was most concerned about, because at first he gave off this weird Teddy Ruxpin vibe to me. Pikachu is the only Pokemon in this movie who has to, talk and emote and stuff. It's not like Mewtwo, who doesn't have to move his mouth, and face freaks on a CG character is a whole other ball game. But as time went on and I saw it more in action, I warmed up to it a lot. Pikachu emotes amazingly and it's absolutely adorable. Once again, there is an adjustment period, but once I got past that, I fell in love with this version of Pikachu. Detective Pikachu is also a movie with a very unique and eye-popping lighting direction, and seeing the Pokemon be able to blend and interact with that lighting in such a natural way makes the whole thing feel more real and genuine. It's great stuff. I also really appreciate how they use Pokemon beyond just the original 150. I love Gen 1, obviously, that's where I started, but I love the other Pokemon a whole lot too. I would love to know how they chose what 50 or so Pokemon they were going to use in this movie. That must have been such a tough elimination process. But I can't tell you how excited I was to see Pokemon like Joltik and Morlul just wandering around the background. And the Pokemon are just one part of the care that went into the production of this movie. There are so many great little callbacks and Easter eggs sprinkled throughout. If you are a longtime Pokemon fan, there is so much replay value in just looking around during the crowded Rhyme City scenes to see what other details there are, because I promise you, you will not find them all on your first viewing. Now, a lot of people have already made videos specifically on all the little details and references in this movie, and we've got a lot to talk about in this review, but to satisfy my inner fangirl, I'm gonna run through a few that made me smile when I saw them. The Snorlax sleeping in the middle of the road, the Squirtle Squad putting out a fire, Tim's phone having red, blue, and yellow highlights, Mewtwo's escape being very reminiscent of his escape and destruction of the lab in the first Pokemon movie, even saying they're outside. All of the relics and Pokemon-related artifacts scattered around in the movie, from the Creation Trio having giant statues in Howard Clifford's office, to having a display case full of amazing-looking evolution stones. The score calling back to the game's soundtrack on multiple occasions, including sneaking in the original Pokemon theme song, more than once. The document's about Mew, Harry has a file on, IRL Pokemon cards, and the detail reiterating that Pokemon also pick you when you try to catch them. For a movie that really plays with the relationship between people and Pokemon, I really appreciate that they established that up front. And for a non-Pokemon Easter egg, did anyone else notice the movie from Home Alone playing in the back? But while Detective Pikachu, and specifically Rhyme City, are crammed with amazing background details, they also know when to make sure not to distract from important moments going on in the foreground. You ever notice how there's hardly anyone else around during scenes where Tim and Pikachu bond or have a heart-to-heart? That's because, as cool as the details are, the movie knows when to make sure its audience is focusing on the major story and character moments. The movie's packed with a lot, but it's thankfully not crowded, and Rhyme City itself is just gorgeous. On every level. Can I live here? Can I live here, please? Rhyme City definitely feels like a Pokemon city, being a combination of art cultures and incorporating Pokemon into the lifestyles and businesses of the people who live in it, which is so important. I know that was a lot of people's main concern and one of mine about the movie, that it would just come off as our world with Pokemon haphazardly dropped into it, but it's not that at all. They clearly went above and beyond to make every person and business and sign feel like their lives revolve and are affected by sharing it with Pokemon. It's really beautiful to look at. And the moments of atmosphere and just soaking in the environment they create are absolutely stunning. The crew described the style of the film as neo-noir, and as a fan of the noir and mystery genre myself, I can definitely see that. I love when a dark, atmospheric environment can still be vibrant and colorful, recognizing and taking advantage of every unique source of light in this big, bustling city. Personally, I feel that's much more true to life than the brown dinginess of grittier movies. Even locations like the abandoned laboratory use lighting work that gives the magical result of creating atmosphere, but still being able to tell where everyone is. I could go on and on. There are so many great little details and moments of deeper thought put into establishing this world, but I'm realizing that I'm 6 pages into the script, so maybe it's time to talk about the story and characters and stuff. Yeah, let's do that. Tim and Pikachu's investigation and journey is by no means the most complex out there, but I was invested the whole way through when I was watching it in the theater. It's not the most intricate whodunit in the world, but the pacing is solid and the progression and twists are well executed. I will be giving away the mystery, but I'll save the details for later. Let's just say this movie makes great use of red herrings. The only major flaw I can find with it is that the substance that drives Pokemon crazy, R, is not connected to Team Rocket in any way. If you listen closely, you can hear the sound of longtime Pokemon fans collectively going, "What a missed opportunity." But the investigation is a great excuse to explore the city and run into some colorful characters, sometimes literally. Mr. Mime acting like an actual mime may have been overplayed in the trailers, but I still found it amusing. With the interrogation technique Tim ends up using being very effective and absolutely hilarious in how dark it is. Especially with Justice Smith being coached on proper miming. Now that's dedication. Speaking of his performance, biggest props in the world to Justice Smith. Considering the fact that he spends 90% of this movie acting with puppets or nothing, Justice Smith does an incredible job. I don't think we appreciate great acting with CGI characters as much as we should, because it's really hard to do and there are some bad examples out there. And I honestly had no strong feelings one way or the other about Ryan Reynolds playing Detective Pikachu when it was announced. Once the promotional material came out, it sounded fine, but now having watched him throughout the course of the film, it works spectacularly. I can't speak for if this is true to the character of Detective Pikachu from the original game, but in terms of what the movie seems to be going for, of an in-your-face, ready for action, but subtly confused and insecure little yellow puffball, this was excellent casting. And part of me loves that this Pikachu isn't a gifted detective or observer, he's just really enthusiastic about investigation and thinks he's a good detective because he wears a deer stalker. Or Stantler stalker. Deerling stalker? Anyway, I have to wonder though, do they even bother giving Ryan Reynolds a script for these roles anymore? There's so much banter and ad-libs, I swear, they just gave him a rough outline and said, have at it. There are very few scenes where Pikachu doesn't contribute to the conversation, but thankfully, it's wildly entertaining instead of unbelievably annoying, because some of these lines had me rolling.
Playing charades. We're not playing charades. Okay, I'm gonna get a knife. Not the knife. Okay, bad idea with the knife.
And there were only a couple of bathroom jokes here, which is amazingly restrained for a live-action CGI hybrid family film like this. Still don't love him though. But Ryan Reynolds sadly singing the Pokemon theme song may be the best scene in the movie. It was definitely the biggest laugh in my screening.
Gotta catch 'em all. It's you and me. I know it's my destiny.
Tim and Pikachu's back and forth is really delightful. This relationship and how it's portrayed by Smith and Reynolds is a joy to watch throughout this adventure, and gives the movie a more personal heart than it might have had following a typical Pokemon journey. But before I go more into that, I want to take a moment to appreciate the wannabe reporter, Lucy Stevens, played by Katherine Newton. They do a good job at making Lucy an important part of the mystery instead of just a disposable love interest or a damsel in distress. The information she's able to gather becomes essential for Tim and Pikachu to get the answers they're looking for, even if she does get kind of nudged over to the side by the time we reach the climax. But I really liked how determined she was throughout the movie. She's clearly dedicated to being a reporter, but wants to be taken seriously because no one around her does, despite clearly being capable. And seeing just how seriously she took her investigations gets a laugh out of me. Though I will admit, part of me wishes she wasn't a love interest at all. The romantic stuff feels so tacked on at the end of the story, and only there because it's a boy and a girl sharing multiple scenes together. I think it would have worked so much better if they were just mystery pals. Ah well, at least we have mystery pals with Tim and Pikachu. Let's look at Tim a bit closer. During the course of the story, Tim is basically coming to terms with his relationship, or lack thereof, with his estranged father. The two of them becoming distant after the death of Tim's mother. And to rub salt in the wound, it's implied that Tim's mom died on the day he was supposed to begin his Pokemon journey. Oh my god, I just realized. There's a poster for the Sinnoh Championship in the room Harry makes up for Tim in his apartment, and if this takes place in the present day, Tim would have been roughly 10 years old, back when Diamond and Pearl were the most recent generations. That is so clever. I cannot believe I didn't realize until I recorded this. Like, this isn't in the script, guys. I just noticed. This is a tangent. Alright, let's end the tangent. So Tim becomes very independent, to the point that he doesn't even have a Pokemon partner. To him, Harry left for Rhyme City because he chose continuing his work with Pokemon over helping his son get through this tragedy, which might be what happened. The movie never explicitly says. But Tim seems very against the idea of ever having a Pokemon, which is really weird to anyone who meets him. And not only is that an interesting look at how this society works and their relationship with Pokemon, but the fact that Tim's reluctance to have a partner might come from one single incident, but has multiple reasons for it, is nice character building. Most of the movie is Tim learning about the work Harry was doing in the city that led to his disappearance, and part of the overarching mystery is also the mystery of what kind of person Harry really is. Tim realizes that Harry wanted him in his life, but had trouble reaching out. And when he did, Tim was so angry about him running off that it got even harder. But it's clear that Tim was always on his mind. It's just not as simple for either of them as picking up the phone, which is very true to life, and for me was pretty effective. But getting back to the mystery, it's implied that Harry was hired to track down Mewtwo for a mysterious laboratory. On a side note, Mewtwo is very well represented here. He looks awesome, is both intimidating and a tower of power, and the voice is so perfect that I thought for sure it was the guy from Mewtwo Strikes Back. Turns out it's not, it's actually two voice actors, but it's a great effect and it sounds great and I love it. But with the scattered information they can find, it gets tougher to see who exactly Harry was. And while what happened to him would be a serviceable mystery on its own, I like the extra layer of Tim and Pikachu looking for someone they're both personally connected to, but don't really know. And Tim and Pikachu trying to come to terms with each revelation are some of the best moments in the movie, even if their journey isn't the most original out there. I know stuff like one member of a team only realizing how close he's become to his partner after he's hurt, and the third act split of the group group due to a misunderstanding are cliche beyond cliche, but as I've said before, if done well, something that's been done a million times before can still deliver an emotional effect. And I think Tim and Pikachu accomplished that, especially with the addition of the first time Pikachu being able to use his attacks is when he accidentally shocks Tim out of fear. I don't care who you are, that stings. Though now that I think about it, the whole resolution and the third act really wouldn't change at all if Tim and Pikachu hadn't split up. But speaking of the climax, it's time I went into who is really behind all this. And would you believe the veteran character actor was really the villain?
What? I knew it. Stop letting him make you realize stuff.
Really, the biggest twist isn't that Howard Clifford is the villain, but that Bill Nighy is in a Pokemon movie, and it's not as Professor Oak. Like, come on. I don't know if I necessarily saw this coming, but it is pretty easy to tell that there's something suspicious about this guy. After watching it a few times, I think Howard does a great job pulling the strings, getting the pieces where he wants them to be, and shifting the focus away from him as a suspect. But I cannot believe that in over 20 years, I have never seen this mindset of a person, especially someone with failing health like Howard Clifford, trying to implant himself into a Pokemon to gain a superior body before. Stuff like Pokemon being manipulated into angry outbursts has been done a few times, and yeah, even a person in a Pokemon's body isn't unheard of, but I say we've come a long way from Bill's antics. But the mentality behind Howard transplanting his mind into Mewtwo is such a cool idea and really despicable, showing no regard for the life of the Pokemon themselves and only seeing them as a means to an end. Plus, Bill Nighy technically gets to play Mewtwo, so there's an interesting entry for his IMDb page. It's also pretty messed up to think that the entire philosophy of people in Pokemon Harmony and Rhyme City was implemented solely so it would be easier for Howard to carry out his delusional scheme of superiority. I mean, think about it. This whole plan of people being transplanted into the bodies of their Pokemon as a higher form of evolution would have gone way differently if the Pokemon could be called back into their Pokeballs. And on top of all of that, you know how Howard's son was the red herring here, and he was even seen capturing and taking Mewtwo away? Well, turns out Howard had one more trick up his sleeve, because guess what that was?
Your Ditto.
Yeah, sorry main mystery of this entire freaking movie, but that reveal was the best in the movie, bar none. Also, a very effective use of Ditto. Again, shocked it's never been done before. But luckily, Pikachu comes back and is able to put up a pretty good fight against Howard and Mewtwo. Yes, I know, even the movie knows, just go with it. And with the power of teamwork, they are able to free Mewtwo from Howard, and he thanks them by pressing the reset button, because that's what Mewtwo does best. And Mewtwo finally gets to explain not only what happened to Harry and Pikachu, but what kind of person Harry was. Turns out that thanks to Harry and Pikachu, Mewtwo was able to escape from Howard's lab, and he was grateful enough to help them when Clifford's enhanced Greninja crashed Harry's car. In a sense, I think this way of showing Mewtwo that humans aren't all evil might be a bit stronger than Mewtwo Strikes Back, or at the very least, it's a nice alternate interpretation. Since here, Harry and Pikachu work together to rescue Mewtwo after finding out what his fate would be, showing that not only can people and Pokemon work together harmoniously towards a common goal, but that these two went out of their way and risked their lives to save Mewtwo, and I'm sure that stuck with him. Which is why he uses his powers to put Harry's mind somewhere safe, while his son was called to help repair his body. And take a wild guess where the mind is. This was the moment where I was officially glad I didn't play the game first, though the implications make me feel like I have to review this whole movie over again. Screw it, let's get the epilogue. Yes, I did see the twist that Pikachu is Harry coming, but for some reason I didn't expect Harry to actually be played by Ryan Reynolds. I don't know why. Regardless, the reveal and ending are incredibly sweet and definitely add much more weight to Tim and Pikachu's journey and personal moments in this movie. But I guess it means no Detective Pikachu sequels, but after this experience, I would absolutely be on board with another live-action Pokemon adventure. Because, phew. Overall, Detective Pikachu is something I had no idea what to expect of when I walked into it, especially with how much Pokemon means to me and how badly I wanted it represented well. But the joy it gave me was almost indescribable, though I clearly found the words after months of contemplation. There's a feature on the Blu-ray called Detective Mode, where it's basically a more elaborate commentary that shows behind-the-scenes footage and passages from the cast and crew. And it's a lot of fun, but towards the end, director Director Rob Letterman says that he hopes hardcore Pokemon fans appreciate the care that was put into this movie. And as a hardcore Pokemon fan, I can say I certainly do. I think one of the concerns with a live-action Pokemon movie in particular is that it wouldn't understand something most of us have dreamed of. Having these amazing creatures exist alongside us in the real world. But Detective Pikachu brings that fantasy to life marvelously, with amazing CG work, a remarkable understanding of this franchise's history and how to incorporate it, an engaging story that's both simple and layered, and characters I'm sure will become very beloved by old and new audiences. But now that we've seen that this can be done, now I want to see them go all out. If you count the final fight with Mewtwo, there's only 2 traditional Pokemon battles in this movie. I didn't point this out as a criticism because that's actually fairly common with the main Pokemon movies, but now that we know the Pokemon world can be brought to life so well, let's keep going. See a more traditional Pokemon journey, or even explore other areas of the Pokemon world, like contests or Pokemon Rangers. There's so much to explore with this world, and now that we've taken one step, I want to travel far and wide. And the fact that I left the theater opening day saying that I would totally be on board with more live-action Pokemon movies should speak for itself. In conclusion, I want to show you guys something. Among the literally hundreds of Pokemon items I own is this sticker book. You might remember these from back in the day, and it might be the oldest Pokemon item I still own. It's even marked with the time I became a Pokemon fan, which was almost exactly 20 years before Detective Pikachu came out. And if you had told that little kid that this movie would exist someday, I would not only be excited to see it, but I think deep down I'd also be excited that I'd still love Pokemon to this day, and that it would become this massive cultural icon that would warrant a movie like this being made long after the original Game Boy games were created. It is just another cog in the machine of the massively growing Pokemon empire, but it's also a sign that people still love and care about this franchise as much as I always have. Which is why gushing about how much I enjoyed this movie is how I chose to spend my Pokemon Day this year. Thank you again, Pokemon. Thanks to the cast and crew of Detective Pikachu, if someone just happened to stumble across this, and thank you all so much for watching, and I will catch you guys next time. Get it? Catch? Because you gotta catch him. Okay, bye.